The wind howled across the snow-swept plains, whistling past the old timber of the Cheyenne train station as dusk descended, painting the sky in shades of silver and ash. The storm had rolled in fast, smothering the tracks, covering everything in a white shroud of silence. Lanterns flickered outside the station, glowing amber against the darkening chill, but they did little to push back the biting cold. That was when he saw her, sitting alone on the icy bench, her small figure wrapped in a heavy gray coat, a bonnet pulled low over her fiery auburn hair, her gloves dusted with snow. She looked like a porcelain figure, fragile, abandoned, out of place in the desolate station. In her lap rested a worn leather handbag, clutched tightly as though it was the only anchor she had left. She didn't shiver, though her lips were pale, her face stiff with cold. She simply stared into the distance, lost in thought, as though the world had slipped away from her. He was a cowboy by birth, a millionaire by fortune, but none of that mattered in that moment. All that mattered was the quiet desperation in her eyes. He pulled his coat tighter around him as he stepped closer, his boots crunching in the snow, his wide-brimmed hat shielding him from the flakes. His name was Matthew Callahan, known across the state as the cattle baron who had turned dust into gold, a man who owned half the ranch land stretching beyond the horizon. To most, he was a figure larger than life, feared and respected in equal measure, but tonight he was just a man, struck silent by the sight of a stranger who seemed to be fading before his eyes. "Miss," he said softly, his deep voice carrying in the still air. The woman's eyes flicked to him, wide and guarded. They were the kind of eyes that had seen too much for someone so young, the kind that held secrets like locked chests. She didn't answer, but her grip on the handbag tightened. Matthew stopped a respectful distance away. "The night's too cold to be sitting out here alone. The trains are delayed. No telling when the next one will come through. You'll freeze before it does." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the whistle of the distant wind and the faint hiss of the locomotive idling on the tracks. Finally she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I can't go back," she murmured, almost to herself. "And I can't go forward. So here I stay." Matthew studied her, curiosity mixing with concern. He had seen runaways before, fugitives from cruel husbands, broken families, or debts they couldn't repay. But this was different. She carried herself with dignity, even as snow clung to her lashes, even as her body trembled faintly under her layers. "My name's Matthew Callahan," he said, lowering his tone as if offering trust might coax her into the same. "I've got a ranch just a few miles from here. Warm fire, food on the table. Nobody should spend a night like this out in the open. Come with me, at least until morning." She looked at him then, really looked, and something softened in her expression, though doubt still lingered. "Why would a man like you help me?" she asked. Her words carried a sharp edge, the kind forged by hardship. He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "Because I can't stand by and watch someone suffer when I've got the means to make it right. That's reason enough." The snow thickened, swirling around them like white curtains closing on the world. For a moment she seemed ready to refuse, but her body betrayed her resolve, a shiver racking her frame. With a sigh that carried both exhaustion and surrender, she rose from the bench. "My name is Clara," she said quietly. "Clara Evans." She didn't explain more, and he didn't press her. There would be time for stories later. For now, she needed warmth more than questions. He offered his arm, and after a hesitant pause, she took it, her small gloved hand slipping into the crook of his elbow. Together they walked through the storm toward his waiting carriage, the lantern light casting long shadows behind them. The ride back to the ranch was silent, save for the creak of the wheels and the rhythmic snort of the horses. Clara sat close, her eyes fixed on the snow-laden darkness outside, while Matthew kept glancing at her, wondering what twist of fate had placed her on that bench tonight. When they reached the sprawling Callahan ranch, its windows glowing golden against the frost, Clara's eyes widened. She had clearly not expected such a place, a grand estate rising from the wilderness, its wealth obvious yet tempered by rugged simplicity. Matthew led her inside, where the fire roared in the hearth, casting warmth that melted the chill from their bones. Servants appeared, but Matthew waved them away. This was no matter for staff. He guided Clara to the fire, helped her remove her snow-damp gloves, and placed a cup of steaming broth in her hands. She sipped slowly, her color returning, though her eyes still held shadows. He studied her in the flickering light, noting the way her hands trembled, the way her gaze flicked around the room as though always alert for danger. She was a woman on the run, that much was clear. But from what, he could only guess. When she finally spoke again, her words were quiet, fragile, yet filled with conviction. "I was a nurse," she confessed, her eyes fixed on the flames. "Back east during the fever outbreak. I gave everything I had to those patients, every hour, every ounce of strength. But when the epidemic passed, I was discarded like I never mattered. Worse, I was blamed. They said I carried the sickness. They said I killed people instead of saving them. My name, my reputation, it was ruined. I had no choice but to leave." Her voice cracked, and for the first time Matthew saw the tears glistening in her eyes. "I thought if I could get far enough away, start fresh, maybe I could find peace. But I ran out of money. I ran out of everything. And then the snow came.